This
Is that
conference
what
will now be recorded.
Yes, so we're just going to have our faces up for right now, and then we will just go straight and have the presentation fill up the whole screen.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great.
It shows like all right there. I'm muted.
Yeah, it depends on when they come because they like maybe they can unmute themselves. I don't know. We should be able to just control that. Okay. Okay.
Hi everyone, this is Casey Farmer and Alessia Simmons with the Alameda County Census Office, and we're just going to wait just a few minutes until more folks join us. We have about half of the attendees thus far, so just a few more minutes and we'll get started. Can I borrow this?
Yeah, it doesn't have your most updated edits.
Oh, I just need this part. Oh, I only printed my back ones. What is that window?
Screen sharing is full. They can't see this. I just want to make sure you saw my. Okay.
Oh yeah, we can do the welcome now. All right, well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for lunch today. We are excited that you want to learn more about the census or get a refresher on the information we need you as partners to be equipped with to spread the message about the importance of the census and to galvanize participation in your communities. And we know that generating a complete count is really going to take folks from every community and every sector to come together. So this is an important step. 2 housekeeping items is that everyone on the webinar is going to be muted. So we'd invite you to put your questions or comments in the text box. Hopefully people can see that feature within the GoToMeeting platform. And we also want you to know that in this webinar, as you can see on the screen now, you will be learning about Census 2020 and really what's at stake in Alameda County specifically. And you'll learn how your organization can partner with the county's efforts to ensure a complete count. We also want to reserve a significant amount of time for questions. And our webinar will also be taped, and we'll have access to the spreadsheet or the slideshow for you afterwards as well. So thank you, and we'll start with Alessia.
All right, can everyone see the presentation okay on your screens? If you could text yes in the text box so that I can confirm. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you so much for your patience. Jumping right in.
Next slide.
Yes, next slide. Great. So jumping right in, as Casey mentioned, my name is Alessia Simmons, and I am the Outreach Manager for the Alameda County Complete Count Committee. This county census office was set up as an initiative championed by our Board of Supervisors, who did 2 important things in addition to assembling our team. They allocated $1.5 million to ensure that all of our hard-to-count communities are included in the 2020 census. Additionally, they opposed the proposed citizenship question, which is predicted to dramatically discourage participation in Census 2020. I would like to give a quick reference to our website, which is www.acgov.org/census2020, where you will be able to find a recording of this webinar, among other information, including past meeting notes, materials, and additional resources that we develop moving forward. If you haven't seen it already, be sure to watch and share the video on the front of our website, which emphasizes why the census is important in just 1 minute. To start, the decennial census is mandated by Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution and reads, quote, "Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers," end quote, and goes on to say that that this is to be done every 10 years. Data that are derived from the census are used to determine the allotment of congressional seats and the allocation of federal funding, critically important to community programs. In terms of the sense of how the census affects our community, California receives $76 billion in federal funding based on population data collected in the census. Alameda County receives about 60% of its revenue from state and federal resources. And each person missed in the count equates to about $2,000 lost per person per year for 10 years. Additionally, there are thousands of residents in Alameda County who are historically hard to count, including our minority communities of color, those with low English proficiency, people with disabilities, immigrants and refugees, seniors, LGBTQ residents, and children aged 0 to 5. Our hard to count community makes up 26% of our county population, and if we were to undercount by only 3%, Alameda County would lose $1 billion over 10 years. As you can see, the stakes are high for our community and Census 2020. However, at the county census office, we are working hard to ensure that we equip trusted messengers to break through some of the barriers that hard to count communities face to make the census accessible to everyone. So what does census completion look like? Most households will receive a census invitation on or between March 12th through March 20th of 2020 with instructions on how to complete the census online. You will receive 2 reminder postcards after this initial letter if you don't respond by April, and an additional letter with a paper questionnaire if you don't respond in the first 2 weeks of April. The online form will be available in 12 languages, including, in addition to English. You can also take the census in You can also take the census at any time after it has become live by calling the Census Bureau. This option is available in 13 languages as well, and information on how to contact the Census Bureau by phone will be included with the materials households receive by mail. You also have the option to complete the paper form either by not completing the online form or by calling the Census Bureau to request that a paper form be sent to your household. Additionally, 59 languages will be available through video and glossary guides. This slide shows where the billions of dollars in federal funding are directed to in our community. Okay. Census data are used when making decisions on which transportation projects to fund, to allocate funds for CalFresh, health insurance for children, the Women, Infants, and Children program, and other benefits for low-income families. Most of California's federal funding is allocated for healthcare, as well as programs that have health benefits. Additionally, housing programs such as Section 8 vouchers and those that help people in need pay their energy bills are allocated based on this data and benefit our hard-to-count communities. This is a slide that shows a pie chart that depicts a breakdown of how the $76 billion our state receives is dispersed among the programs that I referred to on the previous slide. In sum, the census is important because it produces critical data on our communities in order to determine funding, as mentioned previously, and the allotment of our seats in Congress by driving the redistricting process shortly after the census is completed. So why are we investing so heavily in this particular census? Well, in addition to what is at stake, a complete count in 2020 is going to be very challenging and compared to censuses in past decades. And these challenging circumstances increase the risk of an undercount. Some of these challenges include fear and distrust of government, worsened by the political climate will make it difficult to get our messages heard. Public policies that have been put in place to determine to undermine our immigrant and minority communities, like the Muslim ban, public charge, challenges to the DACA program, and the ban on our trans community from serving in our military. Additionally, the administration has added a question about citizenship on this census that, if applied, will cause a severe undercount and thus a misrepresentation of Alameda County, putting our resources and political representation at risk. In addition to increased fear, this will be the first census conducted primarily online, meaning that people who do not have access to computers, mobile devices, or Wi-Fi could be alienated during the self-response period. The Census Bureau has taken cost-saving measures as its budget has been cut in half when compared to the 2010 census, which has made it unable to thoroughly test its new systems. The census questionnaire is not comprehensive of all languages spoken in Alameda County, including languages such as Mam, Dari, Samoan, and others. In efforts to combat these barriers to a complete count, we are investing in trusted messengers. Local advocates and grassroots community and faith-based organizations are among the most trusted in our hard-to-count communities and will be critical to ensuring census education and access reach these residents. And that is why the County Census Office will be awarding grants to organizations that sign on to do this census outreach. This is a list of some of the hard-to-count communities in Alameda County who historically have low response rates and are difficult for enumerators to reach. As previously mentioned, they make up more than a quarter of our population and are the very people that our local advocates, service providers, and organizations have trusted relationships with. This is why investing in trusted messengers is so important to our work. Because we are an ad hoc government program set up specifically to support the 2020 census outreach efforts, we want to weave census information into existing community, city, and county programs. In terms of how we will be able to best support and track our efforts and the efforts of our grantees, we will use this tool called SWORD, the Statewide Outreach and Rapid Deployment tool from the state of California, which allows us to track response rates by block and by census tract. This slide shows an example of a hard to count area in Hayward, where you can see shades of red that depict how hard to count a particular census tract is based on the state's hard to count index. This helps us understand how effective our outreach is and where there needs to be more focus. To wrap up my portion of this presentation, here is a high-level overview of where we are in terms of timing. We are currently in the education and planning phase. We are building our coalition by educating community partners and soliciting their expertise and developing our action plan on how best to support census outreach. This summer, our outreach grant application will go out, and after we have awardees, we will then deploy our trainings this fall. Starting in January of 2020, we will be in the awareness phase, implementing the tools that we have come up with in the previous phase so that we have everything in place when the census is live. And we will be informing our communities of all of the resources available to them through our partners and grantees. Starting March 12th, the motivation phase, which is when the census is live, participants will know what to expect, what options are available to complete the census, and how to access resources should they need support. Service-based enumeration will begin March 29th and end on Census Day, April 1st. And I will pass it along to Casey.
Great, thanks everyone. Just a reminder to send questions over through the chat box. We look forward to answering your questions. We know this is a lot of information to go through, and we will also be sending the slides around to participants after the webinar. So we want to move now into talking about the ways in which your data is protected. First, federal law under Title 13 of the U.S. Code prohibits the Census Bureau from sharing any personally identifiable information with anyone, including government or law enforcement agencies. So this means that responses cannot be collected and turned over to anyone, including ICE, the FBI, the IRS, the President of the United States, local city zoning departments. And there have been a few examples in history in which the Census Bureau has been requested to share information, such as when the FBI wanted information on an individual, or when the President Truman was renovating the White House and wanted to know information about residents in the neighborhood he would be residing in temporarily. But in both cases, the United States Census Bureau refused to share that personally identifiable information with those who had been requesting it. And the census is really conducted for statistical purposes, again, as shared earlier, so that our federal, state, and local government officials can understand the needs of our communities for funding, political representation, and many other purposes that you in your CBO may look to census data to better understand our community. The Census Bureau is taking steps to ensure that your data is protected from both internal and external cybersecurity threats, such as encryption from for every response on the form, monitoring for unusual activity, and even buying other domain names that could resemble the census's website. And next slide. So, as many of you know, the Trump administration proposed adding a citizenship question to the census last year, claiming that the question was needed to enforce the Voting Rights Act. Locally, the Board of Supervisors opposed this action, and also the City of Oakland joined the State of California's lawsuit against the question because they both of those agencies know what a large immigrant population we have in our county and our city of Oakland, and that this question would surely risk an undercount. So because we are living in a political climate that can often be hostile towards immigrant communities, and we have a number of advocates both on this call and as partners in this work, we know that this is top of mind We are waiting for the citizenship question to be determined. It's in the hands of the Supreme Court. And we know two things. One, that we want to have a response on the day of the announcement so that both our immigrant communities know that they are supported by leadership, by elected leaders, by community leaders from all sorts of immigrant populations. And also for them to understand the importance of the census, that they are included in this community, and thus we've created a theme or a slogan of "Our community counts, our community belongs." So if you would like to join with us, advocates and allies are welcome to join us in this response on the day of the Supreme Court ruling at 12 noon on the steps of the county courthouse in downtown Oakland. More information can be accessed by contacting our staff, and we've sent some emails out about the details as well. While we don't have a specific date in mind, we know that the Supreme Court usually makes its ruling on Monday mornings, and so we are holding the next 2 Mondays here in June for a potential press conference and rally on the steps of our local Superior Court. Also going back to how you answer questions for your community members about the proposed citizenship question, we have an image of what the question looks like itself and ask, is this person a citizen of the United States? And there are a few options. You will note that there are not options for a green card or a DACA or another type of visa. So that if you are in one of those categories, the option for you would be no, not a citizen. So once the question is determined in the month of July, we will have a lot more resources for you and your organizations to be able to convey to the public. We also have partnership with the Asian Law Caucus, and you see their information here. They are a great resource that can provide real legal analysis for you to use as you're conveying this message to the public. And you can see some of the questions here. We are really encouraging all nonprofits, for the sake of their 501c3 status, to remember that the census is constitutionally required, and so that it would be harmful for you to discourage people from participation. And we have a specific answer here that says, the question reads, can someone skip the citizenship question on the census? What happens if they do that? And the answer is it should be possible to skip the question when you fill out the census paper on paper, online, and over the phone, or with an enumerator. And if you skip a single question, the Census Bureau will probably not send an enumerator to follow up about that. This is based on past years of the census, and also, understanding that the Census Bureau has fewer resources in this census. But we will be sure to update all of our partners as we get new information. And it's also critically important that those who do have citizenship status report that they are citizens and not skip that question as well. And that's because this data, if it is collected, if the question is included, could be used for future determinations of important factors such as redistricting, and we don't want to have inaccurate data provided to the Census Bureau. We don't know the implications of that, so if you have citizenship status particularly, please be sure to complete the form in its totality. All right, now we would like to talk briefly about the jobs available with the Census Bureau. As you can understand, it's a huge undertaking that the Census Bureau has to conduct in order to count our country, and they need a huge workforce in order to accomplish the enumeration operations. So the good news is that because we are in a good economy and due to the cost of living in the Bay Area, that the Census Bureau will be paying its staff pretty well at $25 per hour on average, and more for managerial positions. And job seekers can apply now to get in the application pool. However, we have been told that the bulk of hiring will take place for enumerator positions starting in September. Enumerators are the staff who go door to door during the non-response follow-up period. That's beginning in May. They also support with service-based enumeration for people experiencing homelessness, group quarters for people who live in group housing, etc. So one thing to note on the hiring process is that it takes a few months because it includes a background check and they're processing thousands of applications at one time. The application website, or the application must be done online. You can see the website here, 2020census.gov. Make sure I'm reading that correctly. I've got it blocked here. 2020census.gov/jobs. And there's also more information about the positions as well. Let's see. So some things to note about the positions is that there is preference for people who live in hard to count census tracts or who speak a foreign language. The application does not require a cover letter, but it does inquire about your work history, your ability to work with people, and additional other questions, but not a cover letter. Applicants must be at least 18 years old. Currently, only citizens are able to apply for the positions, although the state of California has applied for a waiver, and if that waiver is granted, we'll be sure to share with this community and the broader county constituency as soon as we know that. Individuals will need to be, or males born after 1959 will have to be enrolled in the selective service program. I think that's a requirement of all federal jobs. And the other things to note are that you should be available to work flexible hours, including days, evenings, or weekends. And you must have access to reliable transit or a vehicle. And you also need an email address and access to a computer. They will provide you with a mobile device to do the enumeration out in the field, but email is the way that they communicate with their job seekers, and sometimes by phone as well. Let's see. We know that many folks want to know specifically as to whether formerly incarcerated individuals can apply for these positions. And what we've been told by the Census Bureau is that having a criminal background does not preclude you from applying, but they do a background check. They perform their own background checks, and they analyze how recently the crime was committed and the type of crime that was conducted. So that is as much information as I have gotten. Trust me, I've asked many times. So that's what we know. A little bit more on the timing of that is, again, the application window is open now if you'd like to apply, or you know folks in need of work. We are going to need a lot of these people in Alameda County, as you see, at least 500. The big push for these positions will be in the fall. And we also want individuals to know that when they're applying, these positions don't truly start until approximately March. There's some time, again, for the background checks and the processing of all the applicants. So it would behoove applicants to apply this fall and then to just wait for the response from the Census Bureau and have that knowledge of the timing before they do so. It's just the way the process works, but critically important that we have people that look and sound like our community members hired by this agency to do the count. And we plan to hold workshops in the fall in partnership with the Census Bureau that really help applicants and job training organizations to be able to convey to the public the importance of this work, what they should do to prepare their application, etc. So keep an eye out for those workshops in the fall, and check out the website as well. All right, so I'm going to move forward to next steps. And there are a lot of ways that you as an individual, your organization can engage with the census work that we're leading collectively with you all in Alameda County. So we first have a simple way to get information out to your community members. It's called the Messenger program. And we'd like to tap into your communications channels. We know that many people follow you on social media. Many people read your newsletters, many people open your e-newsletters, and so we also know you probably want to share information about the census and break down the process for your communities. So we're going to provide you that content. We'll provide a few different options. We'll provide it in many different languages and available for use on all the social media platforms and in short blurbs and longer components that you could put on your website. So we encourage you to sign up for that program. It's on our website on the right-hand side. We will also be going out for an RFP with county funds starting, we believe, July 1st, but this group will be the first to know. And the RFP will be eligible for organizations who are nonprofits or government agencies or nonprofits with a fiscal sponsor. And the funding is truly for direct outreach. And some examples are here on the right. So to do direct community outreach, to host a questionnaire assistance center where individuals can come to your organization or a space that would be available for people to take the census on a computer, on a phone, to get direct support and able to answer their questions. And we will also be providing a lot of materials for our partners to utilize, and that will come in the form of how-to guides, FAQs, handouts, and event templates so that you can easily promote your census event with some materials we've made easy for you to do. And let's see. We're also coordinating a lot of our planning efforts. We've learned so much from our partners thus far. They've really helped us develop our strategic plan, and we have subcommittees planned for the month of July, and our focus for those meetings are the following, and they'll be the same for each group, so you only need to go to the one that's most applicable to you. And that schedule will be coming out in the next few days here. But our subcommittees are really a place to focus on specific hard-to-count communities. We have about 15 of them, and we do additional outreach to organizations beyond that. But our subcommittees in the month of July will focus on two things. One, messaging. So we've to really create the content that you will feel comfortable sharing with your communities when it comes time to promote the census. And secondarily, we'll have much more information about the census outreach grants through the County of Alameda. So it'll be a discussion of the RFP itself. So I think that we've provided you lots of information here. Again, our website is acgov.org/census2020. And that has a lot of materials on the side. You can click in and get access to what our subcommittees did the last time around and all the materials that we've created and passed out. So I think we'll start with our first question here. We still have a good amount of time, so please be sure to put your questions in. So I think you missed your comment earlier in the presentation, but will all households receive census via mail? And will most households be asked to complete it digitally and will not receive a hard copy to complete? So good question on the logistics of that. So yes, the way that the Census Bureau communicates with individuals is by mailing information to the household. And yeah, so that's how the information comes. The first is going to be a letter. It will include both a QR code, because the census will be mobile accessible, as well as a 16-digit PIN number that the household could use to enter into the online website to complete the form in that way. And if a household has not responded to the first 3 attempts by the Census Bureau to participate, they will receive a paper form in the mail. Again, this is what we have heard from the Census Bureau. Should any of these things change, we will be sure to convey them to you. That window of time is called the self-response period. That's when we all need to be encouraging our communities to participate, frankly, to just get it over with. And the enumerators will start going door to door starting on May 1st. So we have between March 12th, when the census is live, through the end of April to encourage our communities to participate. That's about a 6 to 7 week window. We've also been told, this is a nuanced part of that, that if you really want a paper form, that you can call the Census Bureau to request that. But if you have taken that action, then you have already gotten through to someone at the Census Bureau, and you can just take the census by phone in that same communication. So then you wouldn't need the paper form, but we've been told that you can request a paper form. Good question about today's announcement from the White House about how the executive privilege motion by the Trump administration would affect the 2020 census documents. So I didn't spend too much time analyzing that today, but I do know that it just appears the Census Bureau is trying to prohibit information from being shared to Congress in order for them to do the further analysis that Congress is asking for. This doesn't relate, in my understanding, to the Supreme Court itself. The Supreme Court has already heard oral arguments. That was back in April. And I don't know the process by which the Supreme Court processes new information that's brought to light after the oral arguments take place, but surely they're doing lots of analysis because they're in the window that they have to respond to that appeal by the Trump administration. A little more background on that case is that there were a number of lawsuits, I think 6 on the citizenship question. 3 made it to court prior to going to the Supreme Court, and all 3 judges ruled against the inclusion of the citizenship question. And the state of New York's case, which was the first one completed in January, the Trump administration appealed that case to the Supreme Court, and they did so in a fashion and a time because the Census Bureau has said they need to start printing these forms as of July 1. So the Supreme Court is set to determine this by the end of June. Great question from another community member here. So it says, when someone is not a citizen, how will they be assured that their status will not be used against them in any shape or form? So this is a great question. We've covered kind of the theoretical answer in our presentation. And this is something that we need to be able to convey to our community members. And we really look to you who are experts, but we'll be working in partnership with you and from our legal advisors on how to convince them of that. So again, Title 13 protects anyone from accessing that information. They cannot request it, they cannot break into the system, etc. So that is the law on the books. I know that there are lots of legal advocates, including those who fought the attempt to put the citizenship question in the census. Those legal advocates are standing by and will be providing as much legal protection should anyone feel that this has been violated. But that is something to do after the fact, and so we want to be sure to convince them about participation in advance. So we're working on materials that you can use to convey to your community members about what this law is. You know, the short answer is your responses are protected by law, and that some people will need more information than that. And so just know that we're in the process. We have a number of months to be able to refine that information. We want to equip you with videos or with talking points that you can yourself convey to the public. But again, federal law protects that information from being shared with anyone. All right, thanks for the Alameda County Early Care and Education Program from the question that reads, if you say that you are a U.S. citizen, but you are in fact not, what are the consequences? So we've been told that it's a crime to lie to the federal government. This is a form in which again is constitutionally required. I don't believe that there is a lot of legal precedent, meaning examples from the past of anyone being found liable for having lied to the Census Bureau, or even having skipped the question, or even having not taken the census itself. But we do not encourage anyone to put false information on this form, because that is essentially perjury or lying. Okay. Let's see. So we've got another question. Will the county have an official stance on the #LeaveItBlank movement should the citizenship question be approved? So we are a governmental agency, and we won't be taking an exact stance on the Leave It Blank movement. I'm not really familiar with it, but if I can ascertain, it means that it's encouraging everyone to skip the question about citizenship, perhaps in solidarity with non-citizens. And as I spoke about earlier, we understand the value to want to stand in solidarity. Again, that's why we're having a rally and press conference on the day of the Supreme Court ruling, whenever that might happen at 12 noon on the steps of the Superior Courthouse, so that people who want to stand in solidarity, including the chairs of our committee, Supervisor Nate Miley and Supervisor Will Machan, and a number of other advocates within this complete count committee, who will be speaking in support of their immigrant communities and the importance of the census. But it's our understanding from the legal analysis we've been provided that the effort to leave it blank would have huge consequences for the future, and that it doesn't result in the type of solidarity that would benefit our community. And there's other ways to express that concern. Good question about organizations who might have applied for funding from the East Bay Community Foundation's RFP, and will they be able to apply for the county RFP? Absolutely. We will definitely be looking at whether you have another funding source to support your work, but we attempt to make our application very similar, because we're all trying to do the same thing: direct outreach that's meaningful and successful in driving thousands of Alameda County residents to participate in the census. So again, the application will be available, we believe, July 1 on our website, and we'll send an email out as well. And so we've got a question about, our organization serves monolingual Hmong population. They do not speak, read, or write Spanish or English. Could we assist them to complete the census, or in other ways, in what other ways can we help them? So this gets back to what I referred to earlier as the Questionnaire Assistance Center, or a little bit about direct action or direct outreach. So in terms of the actual helping of someone to complete the form, we want, we've been told by the Census Bureau that everyone needs to write the form themselves or do the form online themselves. We understand this is going to be extremely challenging for a number of languages spoken in Alameda County, who will not be able to read the actual form that's in English, even if something similar is provided to them in their own language, that the form itself is only in English and sometimes Spanish, and online in those other languages. So the best ways to go about supporting them in doing so is to provide materials that fully explain the census itself, and we plan to provide translations in all of the languages spoken in Alameda County, Hmong being one of those that there's no materials that the Census Bureau will be producing, and so the county will be doing that, and we hope to do that in partnership with organizations that serve the Hmong community. I don't think I'm answering this directly, but what we've been told by the Census Bureau is that the individual or a member of that household needs to actually write or complete the form itself. But we want to find ways where you can make it very clear to that individual that the form that they're filling out in English, perhaps we could make a census form or a list, you know, in the mom language that says, here are the 9 questions that the Census Bureau asks. Number 1 is your name, and then they can refer to number 1 in the census form and understand the translation of that. Or you can go question by question at, say, a workshop that you're leading, where you're going question by question. In many languages, this will be available through a video that the Census Bureau creates. Not necessarily so for mom, but we can still create slides or other handouts that would help those individuals to complete, to see a breakdown and a thorough analysis of that question in their native language, and then you can direct them to what they need to answer on the actual form. All right, are there any other questions? We have about 15 minutes. I know this is a lot of information, but please submit your questions through the chat box so that we can answer them.
Send us questions.
Yeah.
Oh. All right, so it looks like, oh, actually, okay. So there's actually another question. Sorry, I've got them all coming in at once now. All right, so how can we apply for the grant? As Casey mentioned earlier, our grants will be available tentatively in July. We are still working with the county to you know, figure out whether we need to do it through an online portal. Ideally, we will have the applications sent out on our website, and then have you provide answers electronically to our email in PDF format. But we're working with our partners at the county to make sure that that will be okay.
Yep, and the RFP window will be open for 6 weeks. So we plan to start on July 1st, and that would run through about August 15th. And the application, as I mentioned, is pretty similar to the East Bay Community Foundation or the United Way's application. And what it asks is, how do you have credibility in the hard to count community that you seek to lead outreach? And what is your plan to do specific census outreach? And, you know, how do you believe it will be successful? Can you make any estimates on the number of impressions that you would make, or the number of census forms that you would be able to complete? You know, so that's essentially what the application will look like. And we hope that many people apply. Just to clarify a little bit more, the majority of funds are for large outreach grants. Those are $5,000 to $99,000. We will also be pursuing some funding for technology, so people who can provide pop-up labs to support events or community groups that don't have technology readily accessible to them. And then we also want to fund mini grants. Those are smaller grants under $3,000 for perhaps a one-time event or one-time organizing action. And those mini grants won't be available until September through December on a rolling basis. And again, those are for kind of smaller in scale and a shorter application for the smaller grants. And so got another question here from Edgar that says, what should we be telling communities about the census right now? That's a great question. And we know that there's a lot of controversy and that people do have specific questions. What we hope, a few key messages we hope you convey are about the importance of the census itself, and that it provides our political voice. It provides billions of dollars in federal resources that we all need. It's transportation, education, housing, healthcare, and social services, and that we can't afford for anyone to be undercounted. and that also that your responses are protected by law. And we also have a video. It's only in English, but it's does have some there are some words, some captions to explain it as well. But on the front page of our website, there's just a census kind of 101 that just takes 1 minute to watch, and would be great if you could share that around. It shows a family taking the census together, and it also shows the actual services and programs where census dollars are in our own communities. So will the grant be given on a first come, first served basis? No, it will not. Applications won't be reviewed until the deadline for the main grant, the main RFP between July 1 and August 15th. The mini grants will be given out on a first come, first served basis, and those start in September. Good question about, as a questionnaire assistance centers, what are the parameters for helping individuals complete the census form? And can people translate the doc one-on-one? What about older citizens who don't have a computer? Maybe I'll take each one of these at a time. These are great questions. Yes, you can interpret, you can explain to them in person the actual the questions on the census. And as I mentioned, we will have the translations of the actual forms available in all 57 or more languages spoken in Alameda County for you to point someone, if they're able to read in their native language, so that they can see what the question is asking question by question. What about older citizens who don't have computer facility? We definitely want to make this as accessible to everyone. No one needs to learn technology in order to complete the census. So we encourage those individuals to take the census by phone. That's probably the easiest method. It is apparently with an individual person on the other line, and it will be available on the phone in 12 languages plus English. So those are the main languages spoken throughout the country. That's English, Spanish, Tagalog, Arabic, and there's a few others that we have on a chart on another slide deck here. But so 12 key languages plus English on the phone. And if they truly want to see it in person, then it's important to tell individuals that they will be receiving the actual form in the mail if they don't respond to the first 3 attempts, and that it's no problem to respond to the 4th attempt that they get, which is the paper form. So can a center who serves a homeless population provide census forms to individuals without a home address? That's a very good question. We did not go deeply into the service-based enumeration, how the Census Bureau counts people experiencing homelessness in this webinar, and it's because it's a very complicated process. And we are using our unhoused subcommittee to really develop a plan to make sure that those advocates really understand the service-based enumeration in all of its great detail, as well as to develop a solid plan and an outline of all service providers in our county, so we can share that with the Census Bureau and they can do the direct outreach, because the Bureau does most of the enumeration for individuals experiencing homelessness. As you noted, because they do not have a home address, there's a unique form for people experiencing homelessness unless they refer to their shelter or someone else's for their address. But it's called the Individual Census Report, and we will be working with the Census Bureau to make that as accessible to those individuals. So for example, if a homeless person were to go to a computer lab or a questionnaire assistance center and they do not have an address, then we don't want to necessarily turn them away from there, but they'll have to identify what address they want to associate. So can we post your video on our website? Yes, please do. We'd be happy to. We can send you the electronic file of that, or you can use the YouTube link, whichever is easier for you, but email benjamin.ulrey@acgov.org and we'll get that to you. We'd appreciate spreading the word. We think it breaks it down into just 1 minute, and we will have more videos coming out in the future that speak to more of the other complexities, show other voices and faces of our community as messengers for the importance of spreading the word about the census. So yes, it's an electronic file, Moina, so we will be sure to send that to you individually. It's a large file, but thanks for great questions. Are there any others to wrap us up here? We have, I think, 8 more minutes. And if you have other questions, as Alessia said, please send them our way. We're happy to be a resource to you, and we really consider ourselves teammates in this important project. So I'll just take the liberty of recapping a couple key things we were informing you that would be coming your way. One, an announcement about the upcoming subcommittees. Again, we have about 15 of them focused on hard to count communities, where we dive deeper on the strategies to reach those populations. And those will take place in the month of July. And we will be sending an email about those meetings shortly with locations and details. Secondly, the announcement about the RFP through the county will be released, what we hope, on July 1st. So as soon as that becomes available, we'll send you that with thorough information about how to complete the application. And at those subcommittees, we will also discuss the nuts and bolts of the application as well. And we really appreciate your time and getting informed. So we wish you all the best and keep in touch.
Great. Thank you so much.